Legend Z-A introduced the Z-A Royale, a competition held by Quasarticle Inc. to find the best Mega Evolution user. I got a suggestion on the Ditto Daycare Discord server, link in the description, to have the Drag Race Queens partake in this competition. I am your humble commentator, Roberto Dagoberto Umberto Alberto Solis de la Z-A Royale. That is the pun to my username because you may simply call me RobbyForShort. And we're exploring Pokemon teams for each contestant in Season 18 of RuPaul's Drag Race. And without further ado, let's get started. I typically give myself the challenge of keeping each queen to a particular type, but I don't have to be so strict this time around. I'm also taking this time to say that I'm not having fun doing these anymore. Full transparency, I was going to stop watching the show after they misrepresented Alyssa Hunter so poorly on season 14. Then my Drag Race crossovers took off, so I built a community around it, but I can't continue to force myself to watch the show. I'll have more thoughts on the matter during Juicy's section, but for right now, our challenge begins with our Z-ranked trainer, Didi Fuego. I was not expecting this queen to be the first to leave, but having auditioned 10 times to be on the show is an unfortunately similar predicament to Zach, the driver in the Z-A Royale, or Le Z Eternel, as they call him, trying to advance in the ranks and never quite being successful. It's common knowledge that Fuego is the Spanish word for fire, which her team will focus on, starting with her first partner, Capsicid. Didi is from Mexico, known for their love of Tabasco and spicy foods, which makes Capsicid an ideal pairing. It's not based on any particular runway, but if you really wanted to make a connection, the tiara and details on her dress remind me of the seeds on a chili pepper. Plus, it evolves when exposed to a firestone, which adds a layer that circles back to her drag name. I'll be trying my best to give a Mega Evolution to each queen, but this first major battle is obviously too early for that, so Didi will have to settle for its pre-evolved form. Secondly, she would send out Heat Rotom, based on her Reclaim, Renew, Rejoice runway, as her final Pokemon for this battle. She used a material that looks like tinfoil, which made me think of a baked potato similar to the late and great Jiggly Caliente's look on Season 4. Think about it. It's so camp to give a Pokemon that is literally possessing an oven for this baked potato runway. Maybe this was the Thanksgiving feast Didi mentioned in Untucked. Is it broken? Perhaps, but it's an early battle, and y'all love talking caca about how Pokemon is too easy. Mandy Mango, flip it around, East Asian early out! Production really had it out for her because she was vehemently misrepresented. Mind you, this is the 7th East Asian queen since season 9 to be an early out, which is a concerning pattern we should all probably talk about more. Mandy Mango ranks Y in the Z-A Royale, and she likes to battle alongside grass types. Her drag name reminded me of fruit Pokemon, such as Nini, paired with her promo look for the crown-like detail on its head once it evolves into Serena. Mandy is also an energetic queen, as we saw in that Too Much lip sync, and Steenie tends to bounce energetically through the forest, according to its Pokédex entry in Pokémon Violet. Another Pokemon on her team is Deerling, based on her Animal Attraction runway that obviously references a deer. Out of its seasonal coats, I think its summer form works best for the seasonal color palette that complements her look, and a mango can be a perfect summer snack. For her Mega Evolution, it's clear that she would have an Audino for her entrance look, though she wouldn't Mega Evolve for this battle because it's still too early in the story. It showcases her background as a registered nurse, and Audino is seen as a healing Pokemon associated with the Pokemon Center ladies. I'm having trouble remembering what comes before Y. Detox, can you help me?
D to the E to the T to the O to the whole D.
I'm holding. Oh. Right. Our next promotion match for rank X is against Briar Blush, consummate troll and Athena Dion's #1 hater. Briar lives up to her drag name by essentially being a thorn at your side. Her mischievous personality is similar to that of ghost types, such as Yamask, based on her favorite body part runway. Briar has explained that she used to work in a mortician's office when she was 16. She's applied makeup to corpses during the embalming process to make them look presentable, which reminded me of Kafka Grigas, since it's inspired by a coffin. For Briar's second Pokemon, Simone on the Ditto Daycare Discord server suggested Frillish, based on her promo look, which is an incredible pairing that highlights the pink color scheme. It makes me think of the pastel goth aesthetic that fits this look quite well, especially for someone who grew up as a goth kid. Then she would close out the battle with Hawlucha, based on her red carpet mashups runway. She got critiqued by Law Roach as looking like a WWE wrestler, which is precisely what Hawlucha draws inspiration from. It was a shady comment on Law's part, but the pairing is so funny to me. Z-A canonically established that trainers from lower ranks aren't given Mega Bracelets, which means Briar's Hawlucha wouldn't quite Mega Evolve just yet. If I had a superpower, I would love to have telekinetic powers, just like Psychic Pokemon, and that's exactly what inspired Ciara Myst's promo look. Ciara is rank W in Z-A Royale, but in real life she was a special effects makeup artist for many years, which helped her create some fantastic looks, such as this one for her favorite body part runway. I chose Masquerain based on this look for the big wings that resemble eye motifs of this look. Masquerain's head also looks like a water droplet, referencing her drag surname, Myst, which is also an ice-type move that she would use to start setting up the battle. The look is also a beautiful light blue that matches this Pokemon. After setting up with Masquerain, she would continue with Kecleon, based on her Animal Attraction look in which she dressed up as a chameleon. I've never had the chance to pair Kecleon to any queen because you don't really see it in any Pokemon games, but its high special defense could be pretty threatening early in the game. Ciara also carries a Bruxish, based on a mix of both her looks from the Shake 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 runway. We have the bright purple from the showgirl style outfit that complements Bruxish's colors, and the 70s era flowers from the outfit she intended to wear as a flower motif on top of Bruxish's head. I like to see Ciara with Bruxish because she enjoys exploring more conceptual themes in her drag. But she's also a paragon of activism, having worked as an ambassador for Drag Out the Vote to encourage queer people to vote in American elections. Therefore, Gallade is a great partner for someone with these qualities, which I based on her promo look that I mentioned previously. There's a mix between Jean Grey from X-Men and Starfire from Teen Titans that I really love. Gallade is a symbol of chivalry and knighthood that also complements Ciara's drag king persona, and its Mega Evolution further reinforces the superhero idea, even though it can't yet Mega Evolve. Vita, 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 our rank V diva. If you want to get to the next rank, you know you want to beat her. Vita exudes an air of opulence with her drag looks, and always strives for glamour akin to the glistening crystals of rock-type Pokemon. Bear Tundra suggested Solrock for the theme of light in her promo look. Solrock is said to come from space and derive its power from solar energy, which it then uses to give off light when it spins. It's meant to represent the sun, which is classified as a star, relating to Vita's drag surname and the warm presence that everyone felt while she was in the room. We move on to Zebstrika for her Animal Attraction look, in which she dressed as a zebra. This runway category made it easier to choose Pokemon for the simple fact that it's all about animals, but Zebstrika can have a sense of opulence as well, especially when you consider that Elisa, who is arguably the most mother of all gym leaders, has one on her team. For her third Pokemon, it's unfortunate that Vita was eliminated this early because Chandelure works perfectly for her red carpet mashup look that was inspired by Katy Perry's Chandelier look at the Met Gala. We'll have to settle for Lampent since it doesn't evolve until level 41, and we're still in early game at a point in which trainers cannot canonically Mega Evolve yet. I vaguely remember her saying something about loving interior design, but I don't want to search that up, so you'll just have to take my word for it. She ends the battle with Aurorus, based on her Not Today satin look, for the big flaps on the side that resemble the giant sails along its back. It's a classic opulent look that queens wear on pageants, and it works well with the ice crystals on the sides of its body. As we quickly work our way through the ranks, we receive a message from Quasartico, setting us up for a special promotion match against a trainer of an unknown rank, Mia Starr. This lore is such a fascinating way to include Mia's actual job as a talent and casting producer. Plus, if we emerge victorious, we'll receive our very own Keystone and be promoted all the way to rank G. First, we would have to beat Mia's Furfrou. Yet another suggestion from Simone that she paired with her animal attraction look. The runway speaks for itself, and it's a really good choice for the endurance that Furfrou can have in battle due to its high defense. She would further wear you down in battle with her Snorlax, which Planet Mars paired with her entrance look, but it makes more sense when we consider how she refers to herself as Big Back. Mia's first stop in Untucked was always the snack table, and Snorlax often has a giant appetite. For her third Pokemon, I think Lopunny fits her drag style quite well, particularly with this see-through runway. Her drag embraces that 90s hip-hop style that we associate with the French Prince of Bel-Air, but she tends to add a sensual flair that makes it quintessentially Mia Starr. Mega Lopunny has similar design elements that complement this look, like the ripped aerobic leggings, but Mia would instead Mega Evolve her final Pokemon, Starmie, based on her 80s ladies runway. Mega Starmie became insanely popular on the queer side of social media for its ridiculously campy design, and Mia has arguably caused a similar uproar amongst the fandom with her presence on the show. Mia Starr has a background as a professional dancer, much like Vita in Legend Z-A, and the gold details reference the gold casing around Starmie's gem. We emerge victorious and receive our Keystone, which means we can finally Mega Evolve our Pokemon. However, every challenger moving forward can also use Mega Evolution, like our next queen in the ranks, Athena Dion. The established Greek drag artist ranks G in the Z-A Royale, which stands for Grande Dame Diva, and Athena knows all about being a Grande Dame Diva. Dre the Stallion, moderator for our community, suggested Noctowl for her entrance look, as her drag name comes from the Greek goddess Athena, who is associated with wisdom. Owls are the main symbol chosen to represent wisdom, which is why I also chose Hisuian Decidueye for her animal attraction runway. The owl motif is especially apparent in this look, and the goddess Athena is particularly known for using a bow and arrow because she is also the goddess of tactical warfare, and the autumnal colors of its Hisuian form work best to complement her gold details. Her third Pokemon is Dragonair, as another Pokemon whose design is influenced by Greek mythology, like the wings on its head resembling the ones on Hermes' sandals. I paired it with her promo look for the appliques on her sides that match the wings on its head, and Dragonair's serpentine body serves as another symbol that is associated with the Greek goddess Athena. Finally, she would close the battle with a shiny Mega Phalanx that Matt suggested be paired with her 80s ladies runway. Phalanx is based on phalanx formations, and their heads resemble Corinthian helmets worn by hoplites during the period of ancient Greece, further reinforcing that idea of tactical warfare that the Greek goddess is known for. The question remains, can you please her? And let me just say, this season did not please me one bit. But the show must go on as we move on to the next rank in the Z-A Royale. Kenya is in rank F, here to please us with her battling prowess, but not before Michelle Visage sends us on a side mission to find a sheet with lyrics for Kenya to learn her words. Kenya's team consists of cute Pokemon, such as Beautyfly, which Moonstone suggested based on her Shake 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 runway. Beautyfly is the closest in design to a monarch butterfly, and the color scheme is appropriate for a simple black leotard with butterflies attached. Then she would continue this battle with Alchemy, based on her entrance look. Yet another suggestion from the community, this time from Bear Tundra. It's more of an aesthetic choice since the mint cream flavor beautifully matches the light blue of this look, and it's a Pokemon choice that would subtly irk Michelle Visage. Kenya's theme was admittedly hard to come up with, especially because this was the point in the season when I started to feel burnt out and frustrated, and her runways aren't super conceptual. However, I kept thinking back to Exploud, which I paired with her Snatch Game performance because she's a professional Lizzo impersonator. Lizzo plays the flute, and Exploud's orifices simulate the holes of a musical instrument. But really, Exploud is here because she often talked about how she has a voice for radio, and Exploud is the first species that always comes to mind when I think of sound-based Pokemon. Its Pokédex entries even talk about how it uses many different sounds to communicate across distances. Finally, we get a Mega Evolution with her last entry in this battle, the Fable, which Amada Mascara suggested for her Swept Away runway. I hadn't appreciated this look at first glance, but the similar colors to Jason's clothes helped me understand the vision a little better. Kenya said this look was giving Winx Club down, and I agree that her dress is whimsical and fantastical, just like Mega Clefable. She was truly the topic of conversation before, during, and after her appearance on the show. You could say she caused a lot of discord online. She is an E-rank trainer, Miss Discord Addams, and her punk aesthetic pairs perfectly with Pokemon like Toxtricity, which is categorized as the punk Pokemon with a similarly named ability that raises the power of sound-based moves. I paired its amped form with her talent show performance, especially since Toxtricity was part of a Pokemon band in Sword and Shield alongside Obstagoon and Rillaboom. Our moderator Bales also suggested Honchkrow during the beginning of the season for the feathery jet black ensemble she created for the Reclaim, Renew, Rejoice runway. It's a simple yet effective choice that would have looked better on the runway if they would fix their lights. I'm telling you, the color balancing is atrocious, and it makes black outfits get swallowed by the lighting. But one suggestion that doesn't need fixing is Rillaboom. Based on her swept away runway, Simone yet again came in with a perfect pairing that slipped my mind entirely. Rillaboom is a Pokemon is commentary on pollution, which the Pokemon franchise tackles frequently. And it also references her Shake 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 runway, which happens to be the runway look for her final Pokemon, Mega Absol Z. Absol is categorized as the disaster Pokemon, always appearing right before disaster happens. This look is based upon the concept of greed and capitalism, which is the most disastrous socioeconomic structure, and it has a red tuft that it can manipulate like a claw that metaphorically just keeps taking. This Mega Evolution further amps up Absol's design elements, and a lot of Discord's aesthetic is based upon Slipknot and emo culture. Our next promotion match is against a rank D trainer, and that D stands for don't, as in don't piss me off, because what do you mean Jane Don't was eliminated after having the most stellar track record in the US franchise? Quick note as I'm recording this, Drag Race is not about track record, but about the storyline. And Jane's storyline of being excellent throughout the entire competition and then suddenly floundering at the very end because of atrocious judging decisions was not good. A powerhouse entertainer deserves a powerhouse team of Pokemon. And she'll start this battle with Aromatisse, which I paired with her Reclaim, Renew, Rejoice runway. I can see the aspects that remind me of Aromatisse, like her wavy pink hair and the ruffles that line her skirt. Jane also loves fragrances, as she commented on her Meet the Queens, and she could talk about perfume for hours. She would then send out Licky Licky for her favorite body part look. It's a simple pairing that matches this look's long tongue, but there's an added layer of comedy that Jane often infuses into her drag. I also thought of Archeops, based on her Animal Attraction runway, since a couple of her looks incorporated feathers. This look is colorful and bright, and Archeops has very high attack and speed stats that can be threatening with a proper setup, but its ability to feast also complements her storyline of self-doubt and cautious optimism. Since I'm retiring Drag Race videos on my channel, I thought it would be fun to give each of the queens in the top 5 a legendary Pokemon, because why not? I don't typically do that because it feels out of place in the regular Pokemon League format, but I chose Virizion based on her Shake 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 runway. At some point in her Meet the Queens, Jane Don't mentioned that she is a lawyer, which turned out to be a lie, but I thought it would still be fun to reference that silly comment by giving her a member of the Swords of Justice. Verizion's name potentially stems from Viridian, a green-blue pigment, and the feathers are like the ones sometimes worn by musketeers on their hats. Her final Pokemon is Mega Dragonite, based on her promo look. Jane seems to me like someone with a strong sense of justice who is also kind-hearted, and Dragonite is a fierce dragon who's actually a big softie, which makes absolute sense when you think about her Miss Congeniality title. This choice also ties in with the joke of her claiming to be a lawyer, and Mega Dragonite's big angelic wings look just as extravagant as Jane's singular wing on her side. Alright, we're here. Juicy Love Dion ranks C in the Z-A Royale, And she is the queen I thought was going to win the whole thing, based on the patterns this show exhibits. She was the protagonist during the first half of the season, keeping the focus on her drag family, her struggles with addiction, her first win being a comedy challenge despite being a performance queen, and being the first to win 2 challenges while sharing that moment with her drag aunt. The promo theme was light, and the tagline "In shady times let there be drag" implied that they were referencing all the mass deportations. Premier guest was Cardi B. Everything was primed for a brown Spanish-speaking Latina queen to finally win. And then they completely erased any possibility of her winning the show. In fact, it seems like they doubled down on a finale with only white queens, and it's clear to me that after 18 years of this, we're not allowed to bring brown people to the conversation. Mark my words, when a Latina queen finally wins again, she's gonna be white passing and won't speak a lick of Spanish. I want my channel to be a good representation for queer Latin folks in the Pokemon community, and I hope you'll continue to support me and watch my videos, even though they won't be Drag Race related because I'm not having fun anymore. For now, we still have to give Juicy a Pokemon team, starting with Sandslash, based on her animal attraction runway. She was very proud to showcase this pangolin-inspired look because she explained in her confessional that these animals are threatened by poachers, people who illegally hunt for wild animals in protected areas. Juicy wanted to advocate for animal conservation with this look, and I wanted to showcase it here. She would also have a Quackweval based on her 80s ladies runway for her ability to dance. The dress is inspired by Celia Cruz, the queen of salsa from the 80s. Well, of course. While Quackweval borrows design elements from Brazilian samba, Latin American culture adopts sounds and moves from African culture, similarly to salsa. Speaking of music, Juicy is best known for her performances, hence my choice of Rotom, specifically this new form introduced in Pokopia. Her talent show performance is a highlight of the season, referencing her love of video games, and I wanted to pair Stereo Rotom with this look because it's known for possessing electronics. I would love to go for a shiny version of Stereo Rotom for its hot pink color palette, so I edited it to look shiny since it's not an officially released form yet. For Juicy's Legendary, I might have boosted her up just a little bit because she was severely misrepresented. Solgaleo, based on her promo look. I said at the beginning of Juicy's section that she was a main character during the first half of the season, so a box Legendary fits perfectly. The headpiece is the same shape as its pre-evolution, Cosmome, and the corset embodies a lion's strong stance. The promo theme of light contrasts Solgaleo's sun motif, and it references the way it interacts with Necrozma, a Pokemon whose power comes from light. Finally, she would end this battle with Mega Dragalge, based on her Not Today satin runway. Juicy's was the final Mega Evolution I chose, but it was well worth the eureka moment of having these 2 images side by side. The pun of having a Pokemon on her team whose name starts with drag was especially fun because all of her looks were incredible. Its base special defense goes crazy when it Mega Evolves, which to me signifies her endurance in the competition as well as in her performances. She also won the $50,000 prize with Lollapalooza, so her drag can only get better from here. As we inch closer to Rank A, our promotion match for Rank B will be left up to your choice. A clever twist that includes both non-winning finalists. Our first option is Darlene Mitchell, a campy queen with a team that may not have as much cohesion, but can be intimidating nonetheless. Her battle starts with Miltank, a surprisingly strong Pokemon that traumatized an entire generation. This choice is based on her animal attraction runway, since the look is inspired by a cow, especially since she branded herself as a country queen despite being from Indiana. Up next, she sends out Girder, based on her talent show performance. I opted for a Pokemon that wasn't fully evolved since the performance was not quite as strong. Its clown-like nose references her unhinged roast performance, and the metal railing is a nod to all the props she brought in her suitcase. For her swept-away runway, I chose Corviknight, a bird Pokemon for the runway category that had fans blowing on their outfits. One of Darlene's favorite movies is Steel Magnolias, which reminds me of Professor Magnolia, who has a little brown Corviknight on her cane. Now, for Darlene's Legendary, hear me out, Regirock, based on her Beige Against the Machine runway. Everyone was surprised by this look, considering her runway package before this point was rather comical. Regirock is a campy choice for a girly pop Pokemon that was largely overlooked by the majority of Pokemon fans until Regirock talk took off. And that is a metaphor for Darlene's trajectory in the competition. Also, shoulder pads. She would finish it off with Mega Victory Bell, based on her entrance look. Victory Bell has a similar narrative to Regirock, a Pokemon that was less relevant until it recently received a Mega Evolution. Most fans largely discounted Darlene during the first half of the season, but started paying more attention once other queens were gone. The look is tacky but fashionable, and there's a sense of comedy that follows Mega Victory Bell's goofy design. Our second option for this rank B match is Nini Coco, a brainiac with a team that complements her conceptual looks, such as Lurantis for her iconic praying mantis set for the talent show episode. As soon as we saw this look, multiple people in the community suggested this choice. Leavanny was another option based on a praying mantis, but I opted for Lurantis for the higher stats and ability to play with weather conditions, like sunny day. This pairs well with her next Pokemon, Castform, based on her entrance look. Nini has a background in engineering, just like my arch nemesis, MGTV, who also loves Castform, which is given to you at the Weather Institute in Generation 3. After the rain comes a rainbow, and Castform is a good rain setup for her next two Pokemon. One of those Pokemon is Seismitoad, which our moderator Bales suggested based on her animal attraction runway. The choice speaks for itself. I enjoy how the blue color palette contrasts this look, and the bumps all over its body are a better fit than other frog-like Pokemon like Toxicroak. For Nini's legendary, I chose Zapdos, based on her promo look. This came as a suggestion from Simone yet again, one of her first suggestions alongside Jolteon for this same look. Zapdos can be found at the power plant in Kanto, and I associate electric types with the Engineer Trainer class from the Generation 1 games. Her Mega Evolution comes in the form of Mega Malamar, based on her favorite body part runway, for the lanky body covered in multiple bright colors that resemble LED lights. Nini's favorite body part was her brain, and Malamar's tentacles grow significantly when it Mega Evolves, giving it the appearance of an oversized brain. The time has come for our final match to prove ourselves as the strongest Pokemon trainer in the Z-A Royale. Trainers who reach rank A in the Z-A Royale are granted a wish by Blazartica, which they will fulfill to the best of their ability. Myki Meeks is a rank A trainer, and she got her wish granted as the winner of the season. But you are now also a rank A trainer, and I, RobbyForShort, will be granting your wish. The Pokemon team of the grandest, most highly anticipated queen. But first, we need to beat Myki's team of underrated Pokemon, starting with Klefki, a support Pokemon that Simone also suggested based on her promo look. Myki expressed that this look had keys because my key was a pun off of her name. Perfect for a key-holding Pokemon. It's a great set of Pokemon to start a battle with by taking advantage of its ability, Prankster. When I say underrated Pokemon, I'm referring to Pokemon that folks wouldn't typically utilize in VGC, like her second Pokemon, Glaceon. Friend of the channel, Caricature, made a beautiful drawing of her après-ski party look, which is what ultimately inspired this choice, and it was seen and loved by Myki on Instagram. For a Pokemon that barely sees usage in competitive battles, Glaceon had a great run in the ZA ranked battles for multiple seasons as a threat to the common dragon types of the format. Another one of our moderators, Sky, suggested two Pokemon for Myki's team, one of which is Spiritomb, for her talent show performance as the Bride of Frankenstein. The choice of Spiritomb is inspired by the lore that it's an amalgamation of 108 spirits, and Frankenstein's monster is a mismatch of different body parts. His other suggestion was Beheeyem, as a nod to Myki's entrance and drag excellence looks, which reference the stars and space. I ultimately settled on her Beige Against the Machine runway for a futuristic silhouette that complements Beheeyem's lore as a Pokemon that comes from space. As a final queen, she would also receive a legendary Pokemon, and I felt that Azelf was an appropriate and unexpected choice. I based this on her Not Today Satin runway, since it has a color scheme that works perfectly, and the ribbons resemble Azelf's tails. It's considered the being of willpower, a testament to Myki's storyline of resilience, despite being voted at the bottom by her peers. For her final Pokemon to end the battle, we have Mega Chimecho, based on her Shake 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 runway. I like how the tie-dye fabric of this look works with Chimecho's tail. It's a fun and colorful look with many zip ties that remind me of the wind chimes hanging from its chingling-shaped back piece. Chimecho's Mega Evolution brings new life to a Pokemon that was generally seen as weak in the competitive scene. Another reminder that underestimating someone only makes their victory all the more unexpected. Congratulations! By defeating Myki Meeks, you've proven yourself to be the strongest trainer in the Z-A Royale. As a final hurrah for this series, the day has come to grant you a rush, and for you to finally learn about RuPaul's Pokémon team. This has been in my drafts for years, waiting for the perfect opportunity. RuPaul Andre Charles is the host, judge, and producer of this TV show, and I made sure to encapsulate decades worth of her career and digital footprint to create this Pokemon team for an Infinity rank trainer. First Pokemon is a shiny Revavroom for her Season 2 promo look that features her iconic tracksuit in black and hot pink. RuPaul's Drag Race is based upon the concept of drag racing, from which the show gets its name. It's a pun that refers to his love of automobiles, as seen online with his car maintenance tutorials, especially considering he worked in his family's car selling business for years. This shiny gold coloring better reflects her typical outfit aesthetic that also calls to her next Pokemon. Let's move on to Golden Go, which serves as a reference to her song New Friends Silver, Old Friends Gold. I would occasionally receive Golden Go as a suggestion for multiple gold runway looks on the show, but I never included them because I wanted RuPaul to be the only person in my series with a Golden Go, because they're meant to be rare. Many of RuPaul's looks feature some kind of gold ensemble, like this promo look for All Stars 3 that had a golden theme. Golden Go is the literal money Pokemon, categorized as the coin entity Pokemon, and RuPaul's little show has become quite lucrative. I want to go back to the beginning of her drag career with Sandy Shocks, which I based on this early photo of RuPaul in gender-bending drag. RuPaul has a background in the club kid scenes back in the 80s, where she would perform in a punk band, Wee Wee Pole. Sandy Shocks might borrow some punk rock influences in its design, and it's a past Paradox Pokemon, so there's a joke in there about RuPaul being old. Halfway through her team, we have Mew as her fourth Pokemon for the idea that it carries the genetic code of every Pokemon in existence. Mew's ability to transform makes it unique in that it is the only other Pokemon that can do so other than Ditto. I don't want to Susie toot my own horn, but I can confidently say that there wasn't really a vast genre of videos online about Pokemon and Drag Race before I started making my videos. I definitely didn't start it, but many people have commented on how I've brought a fresh perspective to this niche. Mew is an analogy for the fact that RuPaul has casted every queen on the show, transforming reality TV by adding a queer lens. She eventually expanded the franchise internationally, starting with the UK, hence why I paired it with this simple but provocative promo look for Drag Race UK Series 2. Drag Race UK is racist, by the way, so stay tuned for my true final Drag Race video essay later this year, featuring my good friend, Archie Mark. Her penultimate Pokemon is the most massive joke attributed to RuPaul that also brings some political commentary. Every queen in this video has had a Mega Evolution, so I thought it was only fair to give RuPaul a Mega Evolution as well. Enter Mega Excadrill for an interview with NPR in which she confirmed that her husband, George LaBarre, inherited a giant ranch that practices fracking. It's terrible for the environment because you're essentially extracting every ounce of oil from the ground, which causes mini earthquakes, and we know that RuPaul doesn't have the best balance. There isn't a proper look to pair this with because most of her looks are cocktail dresses, gowns, or jumpsuits. But the very first Drag Race promo seemed like a good fit, with a commentary of motor vehicles utilizing oil. Finally, as the host and executive producer of RuPaul's Drag Race, RuPaul needs the ultimate Pokemon, one that has been teased throughout every iteration of my Pokeparty game shows. And no, it's not a shiny Magikarp. The supreme deity of all Pokemon, Arceus, closes out her team. Arceus is the only Pokemon that makes sense for this prompt. It's considered a godlike deity that is said to have created all other Pokemon. In Legends Arceus, the player receives an Arceus after defeating it in the Hall of Order. But the game has dialogue that informs you that this Arceus is merely a copy of itself. And if she can't create copies of herself, how else is RuPaul supposed to film all of these seasons one after another? Despite her many controversies, for better or for worse, RuPaul remains at the center of queer culture, and a godlike deity such as Arceus deserves to be paired with this Season 5 promo look that embodies the essence of divine grandeur. Thank you for supporting this series for all these years, and I hope you'll continue to support me as I host game shows, hunt shiny Pokemon, and explore other topics in the Pokemon world. Consider watching my latest Pokeparty game show, or my girly pop lock playthrough of Pokemon Coliseum. And as always, I appreciate you being here. Bye!